recently audited a $15 million brand that missed over $4 million in 2025 because of this customer retention gap in their business. They assumed it was an issue with meta, tracking, credit fatigue, targeting, but when we dug into their retention marketing, they only did 4.85% of total revenue in Klaviyo, which means they left anywhere between $3 and a little over $4 million on the table in 2025. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to share where this retention gap exists in nearly every brand we speak to and talk to the 5 steps that we take to fix this in the next 30 to 90 days. All right, so there's a $4 million leak inside of this $15 million brand that we audited recently, and they weren't really paying attention to it. The goal of this is to help share with you how to close that retention gap for 8-figure brands scaling to 50 million and beyond. 7-figure brands typically don't feel this pain point as much because they're still trying to find product market fit, trying to get a consistent customer base. But when you get into that low 8-figure range and you're scaling to 50 to 100 and more, this becomes a huge gap and a huge lever that you need to take care of. Now, why is this important? Kind of like I mentioned, when growth stalls for e-com brands, they tend to think their bottleneck is meta tracking, creative fatigue, things of that nature. The Andromeda update in the middle of 2025 really rocked the boat for a lot of people. By now, if your ad agency hasn't figured that out and resolved that for you, then there's a bigger problem here. If that's still working for you and it's doing well, kind of like this brand, it's not necessarily meta that's the issue, it's their retention, right? So again, they did 15 million in 2025 and Klaviyo only contributed 4.85% of that total back to the business. You can see the screenshot here of that. Again, they were obsessing over ROAS, over meta, all that fun stuff, but they were bleeding $3 to $4 million out the back in high contribution margin revenue. If your own channel attribution isn't at least 20%, if not 30% or more, you likely don't have a traffic problem at this level of scale, right? You have a retention problem. Spending more on ads is just like trying to fill that bucket with a fire hose, and either the bucket is too small or it has so many holes in it that it doesn't even hold the water. It doesn't even hold the customers, right? So overall, that's what I'm going to be showing you guys today. So why pay attention? Well, I've been in marketing sales online since 2014. My partner and I, Aaron, have generated over 100 million in online sales. That is likely a conservative number at this point in time. I am a retention specialist, so I've scaled 8-figure lists to 30% of total revenue pretty consistently, managing hundreds of thousands, if not million person lists. I've owned and operated my own businesses, 2 7-figure businesses. So not only am I marketing for businesses that I help, but I've also owned and operated my own. So I've seen both sides of that coin. And then the final piece, we're experts in health, wellness, and lifestyle brands. We primarily and specifically only help those types of D2C e-com brands. So the last 6+ years, this is where we've been focusing and what we've been helping. The 30% benchmark, this is where we need to start because we need to set a benchmark of what does it actually need to look like, and then we can cover the gap from there. So ultimately, what I want to show you today is the retention gap that's costing at least this brand anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 a month in just contribution margin. Like it's cost-effective, high contribution margin revenue. At 15 million, a 5% attribution is only about 730K. In a healthy brand, that number should be north of $4 million with that 30% as the benchmark. Okay. Now divide that by 12. That's where you get that 300K plus. It's like 334, something like that. But ultimately, a healthy brand's at 30%, and this is the standard. This is the industry standard, but this brand is less than 5% on average. So the gap, this is a huge gap. It's a huge retention gap, and it's not just a gap. It's lost revenue, right? It's lost contribution margin. Without a retention engine, you're forced to go back to Meta and Google and rebuy your own customers. So if you pay for a customer, $30 to $80 to get them in the door. You've got your COGS, you've got your ad costs, etc. Great, you pay for that customer. Maybe you've got some profit on the front end, if not break even. But ultimately, if you want to scale the brand and you don't have a retention engine, what you're doing is you have to go back and beg Meta and Google to say, hey, I already bought this customer, but I need to buy them again to get them back in my business. We want to remove as much of that as possible because once you have that customer, you want to keep them for as long as possible. You want to drive their value up as much as possible by helping them with your products. That's pretty straightforward. That's pretty elementary. But when it comes to brands that are scaling quickly, they don't really have time to look around and say, okay, we've got 300,000 customers that came in the door. What percentage of those actually returned for a second, third, fourth purchase in the last year? They're not really focusing on that because Meta and Google and getting new customers is the flashy, it's the sexy, it's the thing that drives growth in a lot of people's minds, when retention is the thing that holds growth, right? You can create more growth, but what holds it is retention. Now, another caveat here is if you want to scale the brand faster and more profitably, and or you want to sell the brand firms won't touch your brand if you don't have high LTV and automated repeat purchases or retention, MRR, right? Monthly recurring revenue that is consistent month over month. If you have to turn on ads to create growth or keep growth even, firms won't touch you guys. They just frankly won't, because it's a higher risk. If you remove ads from the business, obviously there's going to be some flatline and some stagnation, but is there a business there without getting new customers? That's essentially the question they want to answer. And if you can't say, yeah, we've got 40% return customer or more, 30-40%, and if we turned off ads, those 34% would drive this much growth. They're going to be asking about that. We need that to be a piece of the business that is consistent month over month. Now, this is a question that some people ask too, is what about attribution overlap? And this comes from a place of, is the customer going to buy whether I send them marketing or not? And in the case of this brand, if we were conservative and gave all 5% of the Klaviyo attribution to that overlap, there's still 15 to 25% to get to industry standard they're just not collecting. So while they scaled over the last 2.5 years or so to 15 million, that 5%, that was the average. So there, again, there's 15 to 25% of incremental gain there that they're just not collecting. And when it comes to attribution overlap, it is likely in many cases, depending on your attribution window, which we look at a 1 to 5 day attribution window in Klaviyo, and we're sending 3, sometimes up to 5 emails a week, depending on the segment. So a 3 to 5 day attribution window is pretty conservative. If you want to get really aggressive, you can go down to 1 day or 24 hour. But with that in mind, you still got $2 to $3 million for this brand, at least. In 2025, they didn't collect because they just weren't doing retention. They weren't actually getting in front of their customers. Now, the death of the batch and blast. So when brands, and this is the most frustrating part for me, when brands get into this growth vehicle, if you will, they're scaling and growing so quickly that they're really just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it works. And the main thing here is we want to stop shouting at our list, right? We want to send the same, if we are sending the same email to everyone twice a week, we aren't marketing, we're just shouting, we're just yelling at them, and we're spamming them to buy. And our best customers are in that full list, right? So the old way is to batch and blast, and that routinely burns out your deliverability for a tiny 24-hour sales spike. So maybe you offer a discount or buy one, get one, or whatever it may be, and you get sales for 24 hours and you guys reach or get close to goal. It's like, okay, cool, we made it. Let's do it again for the next month. This is burning out your list, and people aren't going to stick around, or they're going to start ignoring you and not unsubscribe, and it hurts your deliverability. The new way to do this is building what we call behavioral trigger engine. So this is across campaigns, flows, and direct offers that we make to the list. And it acts as your 24/7 automated salesperson, and it never sleeps, it never gets fatigued, it never turns off, and it runs and it sells and scales while you sleep. For this brand, their growth, getting through this growth plateau isn't going to be get more first sales profitable. What it's going to be is how do we get them from the first to the second purchase, second to third, third to fourth, because every time they purchase, that contribution margin gets bigger, right? Each customer that buys more is going to make it more profitable to get that customer and keep them, but also too, you can spend more on the front end because you know in the next 6 months, 6 to 9 months, you're making $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on this customer. So you can actually scale faster because you know what they're going to spend on the back end in a given time period. Just kind of talked about this, but first purchase to second purchase, retention marketing is in the middle between these. It's between every purchase. And it's the main thing that's going to drive the value of the customer up. And it's going to be the most cost-effective way to do that. Now, there's 5 pillars to this that we typically address. So for this brand specifically, I'm going to go through the 5 pillars to address this and kind of walk through what that actually means and how it actually looks. So when it comes to retention marketing, there's 2 parts. Post-purchase is the second part. So there's 5 pillars to this. The education bridge is pillar 1. So most brands go straight for the next sale the moment the first order is placed. This is, in many cases, a mistake because that first pillar of the post-purchase thank you flow, it's not a receipt. It's not an order confirmed. What we're trying to do is we're trying to handle the buyer's remorse because they haven't gotten the product yet, but they just purchased. So there's a gap between I just spent money and the product isn't in my hand yet. So we want to address that remorse. We want to share the founder story. We want to help get them excited and build anticipation for their product and focus on that emotion as opposed to I just spent $100 and I have to wait 7 days to get my product. We want them to get excited for the physical arrival of the product, build anticipation, build suspense, and kind of like this Willy Wonka gif is the suspense is terrible. I hope it lasts. We're setting the stage for a successful first experience so they actually want to buy again and they don't go into that buyer's remorse and regret buying and never shop again. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is a consumption trigger. So This is essentially when we get in Shopify, and we tie this to Klaviyo, when we get that delivered order metric or that trigger, we want to send them a flow, and we don't want the product to sit in the box on the counter. We want them to open that box, we want them to experience it. We want to send them how-to and pro tip videos, unboxing videos, things of this nature, of just keeping that momentum and being excited through the use and the opening of that box. We're moving them from buyer to user or consumer, and we only want them to focus on that first initial purchase that they had. Now, until they become a user or consumer, we don't want to try and sell them again because they haven't had that first experience. A $50 item for a product like a supplement or something, we still want them to have that experience with the first product for a couple of weeks to feel the outcome and feel the experience in the bridge from the pain that they had to the potential and eventual solution that they're experiencing with the product. We want that to happen on the customer side before we start offering them more things. Now, pillar number 3, we call this the category expansion or the cross-sell. Brands state this 5, 10, 15% attribution because they only sell the customer the same thing over and over again. So obviously we've heard sell them more of the same. Great. There's another level to this. Sell them more of the adjacent. Sell them products in another category. Sell them products in the same category. And just get them buying more things across more categories as long as it will help them. Ultimately, what this does is we turn them into a multi-category purchaser, and we essentially increase their lifetime value, and we make our brand more sticky to them. This looks like essentially, let's say they buy a first purchase, they buy a skin cleanser or something. We use data and AI in various capacities to increase their brand footprint and essentially sell them or offer them the next best product in the mix that they will eventually purchase. So that they buy a cleanser for the first time, the next one's a moisturizer, the next one's going to be a brush or a comb or something that adds to their collection of products that they get from us every month, if not every couple months. So we're always trying to increase the brand footprint with the logic that it makes sense that it's the next obvious purchase for them based on what they bought last time. Now, pillar number 4 is going to be predictive replenishment. So this one, essentially, if a product lasts 45 days, typically, we want to trigger that reminder 5 to 7 days before and say, hey, you're about to run out, you should order more. And we want to set this up for all of our top selling products and or top selling categories or top selling type of products. So we are constantly staying in front of them without being annoying, yet it's timed and specific to them. Something else that's really fun, a caveat to this is, depending on Klaviyo and what level tier you're at and also third-party softwares, you can actually use predictive data to say that, profile or customer A buys every 47 days, profile B buys every 32, profile C buys every 59, and you can set up triggers to send them emails to remind them to buy again because of that. So there's a lot we can do here when it comes to data and predictive analytics to help customize this and personalize it even more. Pillar number 5 is the VIP escalation or the club. So ultimately, we want to use RFM, recency, frequency, monetary value, to build out our VIP, our star customer. Because they're our star customers, they're whales essentially. They're spending a lot of money in a short period of time. Make it attractive for them to come back and buy more. And so we create a club. We give them early access to new drops and founder-only updates. We create offers not available to the average buyer that's only specific to them and that group or even a specific customer. And we put bundles together, buy one, get ones, unique custom offers. For example, unique $3,000 pushpin map. When they spent, over $300, we offer that to them, like a full wall, like a 60 by 60 type thing. We can do stuff like that, just continue to make their experience positive. And this deepens the emotional bond and creates that feeling that we're doing more for them than they are for us. And we create that relationship of not waiting we're not waiting for them to buy. We are engineering their next experience and guiding them to it. All right, so the shift from announcement to intent. What we're doing here is we're moving away from telling people what you want to sell them, and we're moving toward giving people what they want to buy. So based on their behavior, based on what they're showing us, how they act and what they do, and based on that data, we're going to show them what they want next, as opposed to, I want to sell them this, so I'm going to try and create a reason for them to buy it. Eugene Schwartz, I believe, is attributed with this quote or idea is, you can't create desire, you can only channel it. So we want to see what the behavior is and where they're acting, where they're not acting, and what that behavior looks like. And then just put our messages inside of the next steps or the next steps in front of them so they come across it naturally and inherently. And just they find it because they're taking the behavior that they would always take, and it doesn't feel like we're forcing them to do anything. So we just want to put those in the path of them. And ultimately, when you align your messaging where your customer is in their specific journey, your email, SMS, direct mail they stop feeling like marketing and they feel like service. They feel like they're showing up at the right time with the right offer for the right person, and it becomes more personalized because of those things. It's not because I'm a master persuader that I got you to buy something and convince you. 3 to maybe 5 to 7% of the market will do that because they're ready to buy now. But the rest of the market is essentially just living their lives and doing what they need to do. And what we want to do is just put our messages in the path of their behavior that they're consistently doing once we see it, and use that as leverage or momentum to get them to pay attention to us. Aligning those things is what actually starts correcting this retention gap. and building a predictable revenue engine that scales with your brand, going from, the 5% this brand's dealing with to 30%, and reclaim that lost revenue and build that contribution. The multi-channel fortress, connecting the inbox with the mailbox. This is something that a lot of brands that we speak to are not doing yet, and it's a quick win. It's an easy win. So the multi-channel fortress, we want to connect the inbox with the mailbox. So your customers aren't just on their phones. They're in and out of their inboxes. They're still getting physical mail every week. And if you aren't utilizing email and SMS and direct mail, you're leaving conversion to chance. You're hoping that the customer comes back. And while some brands have a phenomenal product and they have a phenomenal identity marketing, this isn't the case for a majority of brands because there are just so many people out there trying to sell your customer something similar to you or different. So the way we like to look at things and break things down is emails for storytelling and building the brand over long term. So it's the emotional connection piece. SMS is typically used for urgency and the final chance to get the immediate click or get them to take action now. And then direct mail is the unignorable physical touch that sticks to their fridge and it stays top of mind in their life when they're not looking at their digital devices. So those are like the three blanket areas that we want to use these for. Ultimately, you want to stagger these per life cycle stage. So immediate post-purchase, replenish, cross-sell, push to subscription or continuity, things of that nature. We're not annoying them, but we're just showing up again in that path of behavior that they're already going to take. And we're just there waiting, saying, hey, by the way, while you're walking by, just a reminder. So something I want to call out here too, and this relates to acquisition, but the meta retargeting trap. I'll explain how this relates to email, SMS, and direct mail here in a second, but you want to protect your ad budget from agencies padding their ROAS and padding their result. There's a signal loss problem that sometimes happens, and it can affect how you actually do retention. So your Meta and Google agency is likely, in many cases, they pad their ROAS or their results by targeting existing customers. So when we do audits for bigger brands, what we typically find is like a 50-50 split of targeting brand new customers and targeting existing. And the agency will control how much of which to make their numbers look good to keep the contract going. We typically run a 90-10, 90 new, 10 existing. And we typically lean towards the more new customers on the acquisition side, and the retention does a lot of the heavy lifting with the existing. So we're spending money on true top of funnel traffic, where some agencies will actually pad that and do 50-50 or 60-40 towards your existing and say that things are going well. They're effectively slowing your scale down because acquisition isn't actually being used to find new people. It's just targeting existing. So this is a retargeting trap. You might fall into this. Some agencies might do this, and you need to ask about this. Now, the way that this actually ties into retention, we actually use Meta and sync it with our first-party Klaviyo segments. So of the people that we know are taking certain behaviors, of the customers we know, tie Shopify and Klaviyo to this, but we'll tie it into the ad account so we can better exclude and include people based on what their actual buying behavior is. So this is not happening. You are spending money on existing customers and it looks like you're performing well. There's likely a gap here. What this allows us to do is to stop showing new customer ads, people who already bought yesterday, and it lets the retention system actually have the attribution that we talked about earlier. So if you're afraid that there's a huge overlap between Klaviyo and Meta and between acquisition and retention, this is likely why, because you're not targeting top of funnel new customers and you're targeting people who are already on your list and already getting emails from you. So there's going to be some overlap. For this brand we audited, they were targeting, I think it was like 95-5 or 90-10. So there's very little to no overlap. And even if we give them that 5%, again, 15 to 25%, $3 to $4 million in 2025 they didn't collect. This is typically how it looks. Klaviyo data or Shopify data, segments and VIPs. We create a feedback loop and we help feed into Meta and make sure that we're doing the right thing there. Just give it data and the ability to exclude and include certain people. So we can focus on acquiring new customers and exclude recent buyers. Again, this just makes sure every dollar you spend on Meta is working to grow the pie, not just slice it up in a different way of the stuff you already have. We want to plug the holes in your retention profit bucket. So if you're an 8-figure brand doing less than 15% of total on Klaviyo, you have already done the hard part, right? You've built the brand, you have product market fit, you're scaling, right? You're pushing into the market. So you've built a product people want and a brand people recognize and they like to buy from. So what we want to do is we want to keep the money you're actually making, right? We don't want to have to go buy customers 2, 3, 4 times. So closing the gap, this retention gap is the most effective way to increase your contribution margin and actually make each customer more profitable and increase their lifetime value. So it buys back your time and it gives you the breathing room to scale aggressively on paid media without the need to actually rebuy that customer or hope they come back a second time. Ultimately, what we want to do is we want to help you identify exacy where your retention engine is stalling, because if Meta is scaling well, you're within your target ranges on your metrics, your ROAS, your CAC, your CPM. If you look at that still, your MER, if you're looking at marketing efficiency ratio, whatever metric you're looking at, if growth is stalled out, we want to look at retention because, again, this 8-figure brands was doing 4.85% on average, and they should be between 20 and 30%. There's millions of dollars that is not being addressed. So in many cases, when we find this, brands have a retention problem. Now, if you're looking for help with retention marketing and you're looking for an agency or a partner to take this over for you and actually look at what it takes to scale the brand, go ahead and find a link below this video. Go ahead and book a call. You'll talk with me, Chris, and we'll talk through the process.